Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, the story is changing in Chile. 40 years after the military coup that brought Pinochet to power, the Chilean media are telling the story in a different way. Brazil's biggest media company admits it was wrong to support the former military regime in that country. Norway gives birth to a new kind of television, but will slow TV catch on anywhere else? And if you like the idea of an attack on Syria, it's time to ante up.
Together, we can do it.
The Kickstarter campaign is our web video of the week. Here at The Listening Post, we often use the media in a particular country as a lens through which events in that country are reflected, including societal changes. This week, we're doing that with Chile, which has just marked the 40th anniversary of the military coup that brought down a democratically elected leftist president, Salvador Allende. Anniversaries marking that day have rarely received all that much attention in the Chilean media. This year, however, is different. Mainstream news outlets have unleashed a deluge of memory, breaking through previously self-imposed limits on what television channels would show or say about the coup and the 18-year-long dictatorship that followed under Augusto Pinochet. And at a time when institutions like the judiciary have publicly asked for forgiveness for their failure to protect the persecuted, some of the media have also admitted complicity in covering up human rights atrocities during the dictatorship. A part, that is, from one key outlet, El Mercurio, Chile's oldest newspaper. It was funded by the CIA to launch a media campaign against Allende before he was taken down. No mea culpas there. Our starting point this week is Santiago, the date, Chile's own 9/11, September 11th, 1973. The last words Chileans ever heard from their president, Salvador Allende, were these. General Pinochet's military called those bombings Operación Silencio, Operation Silence. Its effect was lasting and went well beyond the two stations. The Chilean media were silenced and would stay that way for almost 2 decades of dictatorship.
Those of us who lived in Chile at the time faced the reality of daily life, the censorship, the manipulation of history that existed in the media, which had been taken over by the military. All the TV channels were controlled by the dictatorship.
Leftist newspapers which were supportive of the Allende government were simply closed, so there was no need to censor them. And the newspapers and other media who were allowed to continue to publish, I would say there was a lot of self-censorship. Censorship played a role to prevent people from learning what was going on. Definitely.
It was like a kind of schizophrenia, a kind of bipolar era. We lived in harsh times, but the media did not reflect this. They showed a country that did not really exist, apart from in the imaginations of those in power.
Chile, which had been a model Latin American democracy since 1891, lived through a nightmare. 3,200 opponents of the regime were killed or disappeared. An estimated 28,000 were arrested. There was systematic torture, and one study put the number of Chileans who fled the regime at 200,000, or 2% of the population. When Pinochet stepped aside in 1991, replaced by a civilian government, he maintained control of the military. His shadow loomed over the country and the journalism it produced.
It was as if nothing had happened. And there was almost denial, no? Human rights was always in the past tense. It was almost historical. And therefore, people didn't want to discuss what happened. Even if they had got rid of Pinochet, they're still under some kind of spell, no, about what happened.
In the 90s, telling the truth was complicated. Pinochet was no longer president, but he was still the head of the military and still had a huge amount of power. And he was clear about what could and could not be reported.
In 1998, Augusto Pinochet became big international news when he was put under house arrest in London. His lawyers helped get him back to Chile, where he spent his final years fighting attempts to prosecute him until his death in 2006. Even then, the Chilean media covered his legal case, but failed to properly investigate what happened under his rule. Now, on the 40th anniversary of the coup, it's as though the gloves have come off. Finally. This series, The Forbidden Images, aired on Chile's largest private network. Using photo archives gathered by journalists working for foreign media at the time, the producers tracked down some of Pinochet's victims, getting them to tell their stories, like Carmen Quintana's. She had been burned alive by a military patrol and left for dead.
We interviewed her in the same place she'd been burned alive. That was one of the most intense moments for us. Listening to her testimony and the fact that the crime was covered up, we showed images that had never been shown on public TV before.
The forbidden images that now are coming out are significant because for the first time we are putting together the written history and the visual history, nothing of which was being covered by the media, official media. And in fact, even if there was a commission of truth, people don't believe what they read or what they listen. The image is very powerful.
The media have also challenged officials they once feared.
¿La DINA le provoca orgullo o le provoca vergüenza hoy día?
Me provoca orgullo.
The former head of the Chilean secret police was grilled over one infamous detention center, described in one of the government's own reports as a torture center, where hundreds disappeared.
Nunca hicimos desaparecer a nadie.
He denied what Chileans have long known, but there has been some soul-searching among Chilean institutions. The Journalists' Union has apologized for its members failing to do the job.
La prensa está al debe respecto de asumir sus responsabilidades en términos de que fueron las violaciones a los derechos humanos.
Still, the country's biggest conservative paper, El Mercurio, which was funded by the CIA to destabilize the democratically elected Allende government, has shown no contrition for that or for the failed journalism that followed. One of the paper's columnists outlined the paper's position when challenged on that on CNN's Chilean channel.
¿Está dispuesto a pedir perdón por alguna de las cosas que quizás por un gesto más que todo, que es lo que estamos hablando?
Pero de ninguna manera, ¿cómo se va a pedir perdón de una cosa que resultó tan positiva para el país? Un país que estaba en una crisis tremenda, que estaba dividido, en que la gente hablaba de guerra civil.
We have known for years that the United States sent money to the opposition to Allende in order to help them to fight the leftist government. El Mercurio has been singled out as one of those recipients of the U.S. money. One of the reasons people defending El Mercurio is that the money actually helped the newspaper to survive, because it was threatened under the government.
Chile is still living with the legacy of the Pinochet years. So are its media outlets. They lost the trust of their audiences, and it will take much more than the coverage of this anniversary to get that back. But things are changing. 40 years after the coup, 23 years after the return to democracy, Chile's media outlets are finally coming in from the cold.
This anniversary, the media has let memory come flooding through. Programs on major channels are having a huge impact. There's another generation in charge here. A generation that's lost its fear.
Our Global Village Voice is now on Chile and the coverage of its past.
September 11th has been an important date in Chile for decades, and media coverage tends to focus mainly on the violent protests that take place every year during that day. For the past weeks, every night when you turn on the TV, you can find a documentary or a special program on the coup or Pinochet's dictatorship. These shows, which have been broadcast on public television, has been especially significant for younger Chileans who have only heard half-truths or biased versions of what happened.
What has struck me about the media coverage of the 40-year anniversary is the focus on the division that is still present in the Chilean society, rather than portraying reconciliation or a common vision for the future. On the other hand, it's also worth noting the openness with which mainstream media is now talking about the past. The debate has reached the media in a way that it hadn't before, not even a couple of years ago.
Time now for Listening Post News Bites. Staying in South America on a similar theme, the continent's largest media organization has apologized for the role it played in Brazil's military dictatorship, and it did so after being called out in a series of protests. On September 7th, O Globo, the flagship newspaper in the global media conglomerate, published an editorial admitting its support for the military dictatorship that ruled the country from 1964 to 85. The editorial said, "The truth is tough. Globo supported the dictatorship. The wave of protests on the streets gave us even more certainty in our internal evaluation that it was necessary to recognize this error." The admission by Globo, some 50 years after the coup, comes against a backdrop of protests that started 3 months ago. Those taking part in the marches have accused Globo of distorting the coverage of the demonstrations and portraying the protesters in a bad light. The conflict in Syria was all over the headlines this past week, starting with a positive development. Domenico Carrico, a correspondent for the Italian daily newspaper La Stampa, and Belgian writer Pierre Piccinini da Prata have been released after 5 months in captivity. The pair entered Syria back in April and went missing within days. In an interview after their release, Piccinini da Prata said they were taken by rebel fighters and then handed over to what he called Islamist bandits. He said they suffered badly at the hands of their captors, including mock executions. The CPJ, that's the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists, puts the number of media workers abducted in Syria over the past year at 24, with at least 14 journalists still missing. This past week also saw an aggressive media campaign on the conflict. On September 9th, President Obama gave interviews to 6 U.S. media networks: CNN, PBS, Fox, CBS, NBC, and ABC. Obama used the occasion to clarify where his administration stands on the issue of intervention. On that same day, PBS aired a 1-hour interview between veteran anchor Charlie Rose and Bashar al-Assad, in which the Syrian president denied the use of chemical weapons. You can add another name to the list of individuals facing prosecution under U.S. law over making sensitive documents public. Barrett Brown, a journalist who has written for The Guardian, Huffington Post, and Vanity Fair, faces a maximum sentence of 100 years in jail for making public thousands of emails obtained by the hacking group Anonymous. Brown's investigations pointed to work by private security firms that were hired to discredit opponents of government secrecy, such as WikiLeaks. The Texas court hearing Brown's case has issued a gag order preventing the defendant from making statements to the media for fear of prejudicing his right to a fair trial. Defense lawyers argue that order amounts to a breach of Brown's rights under the First Amendment. This case raises troubling questions about journalistic freedom in America. The most serious charge against Brown is that of disseminating stolen information by posting a link in a chat room to documents that were already available on the internet. Norway is a country that gets relatively little media coverage. Even the elections this past week passed without much drama. And that's the Norwegian media in a nutshell. Not much drama. A few years back, Norway's public TV channel, NRK, decided to broadcast live coverage of a 7-hour train ride. 7 hours of simple footage, a train rolling down the tracks. Norwegians, more than 1 million of them, according to the ratings, loved it. A new kind of reality TV show was born, and it goes against all the rules of TV engagement. There is no storyline, no script, no drama, no climax, and it's called slow TV. For the past 2 months, Norwegians have been watching a cruise ship's journey up the coast, and there's a lot of fog on that coast. Executives at Norway's National Broadcasting Service are now considering broadcasting a night of knitting nationwide. On the surface, it sounds boring, because it is. But something about this TV experiment has gripped Norwegians. So we sent the Listening Post's Marcela Pizarro to Oslo to find out what it is. But first, a warning. Viewers may find some of the images in the following report disappointing.
It's a common value in contemporary television that it needs to be built on strong narrative.
Hey, Seattle PD, we're looking for a Stanley Larson.
Which means you need some kind of a conflict.
I'm telling everyone I'm not happy.
And you need some kind of a development to that conflict. Hopefully, you know, a climax that's really punchy and then a resolution, and something that's clear and concise and engaging and has a kind of an arc to it.
Unless you're in Norway, where people are tuning in to watch a ferry ride that lasts all summer, minute by minute, second by second, broadcast live. This is slow TV in motion, a new television fad where, well, nothing much happens, really.
Open sea, nothing happens. Like this night, we had quite heavy fog for 3 hours. I think it's boring, but boring in a very nice way. But of course you see mountains, you see people waving, because this is live. People are coming in their boats, they are waving at us.
Filming a boat is not a great philosophical achievement, but it's, I think depth can be many things, and I think the gift of just sitting back and watching nature come at you and move past your window through your television, I think that has a relaxing effect.
Slow TV means a way of getting back to sort of the more calmness. You don't have the shouting that you have in a lot of other TV programs.
You can walk to and from the kitchen, you don't really miss anything. And well, it's there. The same thing's happening when you come back to the TV and take another look. It's just nature passing by most of the time.
It's there, it's even, you know, it's like water. It's like the weather, it's like the mountains, it just flows, it's just there.
Well, it is slow, and it's kind of weird, but there's something about it. Something about a break from the world that we live in today. The world of fast-breaking news, of accelerated information, of Facebook, of Twitter, of a media world gone silly. And even when we want to slow down, we can rarely think of television slowing down with us. Unless you're in Norway, where people gather around the TV set to wind down as opposed to being wound up. And that not only begs the question about why it's happening, but why it's happening here.
Well, slow TV started as a crazy idea in our TV department in Bergen, when someone said, why don't we just put a camera on the front of a train and just transmit the whole journey. And everybody thought, wow, yeah, that's a crazy idea. Of course we can't do that, but we ended up doing it just to try. We thought originally that maybe this would be biggest as an interactive format, but then we suddenly discovered that people watched it the whole journey. 100,000 of people watched the journey from start to end.
I do not think they sat down with the postmodern analytical frame of mind saying, what can we do as a reaction to this frenetic culture that we're surrounded with? What can we give people? How can we give them peace of mind, Zen, meditation? It wasn't that at all. It's horrifyingly, painfully boring. I know it's beautiful, but this is absolutely nothing. This has no meaning, absolutely no meaning. There's this guy whose job, his grown-up job, is head of a department developing slow TV. That's his job. He goes to work in the morning thinking slow things.
Not so fast. For many, this man is pure genius. Thomas Hellum is one of the brains behind a trail of long-haul yet very popular TV snooze fests. There was the 18-hour-long broadcast of salmon swimming upstream. And then there was a 7-hour train ride, broadcast live. And let us not forget the riveting 30-hour-long interview. So Norway's public broadcaster may be at the avant-garde of weird and wonderful TV, but they also have a formula that keeps the ratings up while keeping the costs down.
This is very, very cheap if you count up the numbers of minutes produced TV, then it's very, very cheap. Like the snail, we have our house on our back, we eat on board, we sleep on board, and the time we are at work, we make television. We don't drive a big OB van from places to place, we don't use very much time on rigging up and down. but we use the time to produce actually hours of TV.
There's a lot of crews, a lot of time, a lot of man hours go into this that could have been spent on producing actual content, which is, of course, another debate that we have in Norway, because Denmark, Sweden are producing high-quality drama, and we want that as well.
But if slow TV is so wrong, then why do Norwegians feel it's so right? It's not the first time we see this kind of screensaver TV in action. There are channels in North America whose sole purpose is to show a log fire burn at Christmas. It's just that in Norway, they seem to have gone overboard. This year, NRK broadcast a 12-hour wood-burning session on primetime TV. 1 million viewers were gripped. That's 20% of the population.
Bonfires have something magical to it, and we discovered that when we transmitted the bonfire for 8 hours.
My daughters say that every time when they find me sitting in front of slow TV, they find it intolerable. It hurts their accelerated heads. But I pay no attention to them. I just keep on, floating with the boat.
I think the next idea is probably a whole night about knitting. So we'll see how that goes.
More Global Village Voices now on the uniquely Norwegian slow TV.
In many ways, slow TV goes against what is normally perceived as the success recipe for a television show, where things have to happen quickly. They have to happen all the time throughout the whole show. And that is obviously difficult when you're watching a salmon swimming up a river for 18 hours. There is only so much that can happen. But that's the thing as well that keeps people glued to the television screen, as that you want to be there in case something happens.
What's slow TV's magical formula? What makes it so popular? We have a unique opportunity to watch ourselves on television. Norway is a very small country, 4 or 5 million people, and when the boat passes your particular village, you get to go out, wave to the camera, and get to watch yourself on TV. Also, traveling the boat that goes up the west coast can be tremendously expensive. Now you can watch it not only live on television, you can also watch it for free on webcam.
Finally, media all over the world have been focusing on Syria, and for those who are in favor of some kind of military action, the US-based comedy group Second City Network is telling them to put their money where their mouths are through the internet phenomenon known as crowdfunding. The group has posted a fake ad that asks Americans to donate to their Kickstarter campaign. It's called The Americans for Whatever Barack Obama Wants, and they're only asking for $1.6 trillion. The pitch, Help Kickstart World War III, already has almost 500,000 hits on YouTube. We've made it our web video of the week. We'll see you next time at The Listening Post.
Hi, I'm Steve.
I'm Irene. I'm Lisa.
My name is Tom. I'm a graphic designer,
College freshman, stay-at-home mom with a full-time job,
scholar on social policy, and a barista. And I'm just like you.
I'm an Obama supporter.
I support President Obama.
But the president needs your help.
Our president can't launch into another war without you. And remember, when we voted for him in 2008 and 2012, we promised to support him no matter what. Together, we can do it.
That's why we here at the Americans for Whatever Barack Obama Wants, Did You Know He's Friends with Jay-Z, have launched a Kickstarter campaign to fund World War III.
And America is dead-ass broke, so our goal is to raise $1.6 trillion on behalf of the U.S. government.
That's where you come in.
Even a small donation would make all the difference. The $1.6 trillion that we raise will help create a war that truly puts the liberal in neoliberal. There will be millions of troops, thousands of organic grass-fed bombs, hybrid Prius tanks, rockets controlled by iPads, and drones that play the Lumineers while they attack.
World War III is not going to be like those other Republican wars fought on just 1% of the world. This war is going to be fought in 99% of the world.
So please, help us reach our goal of $1.6 trillion so we can make World War III a reality. Why? Because Obama.
Because Obama.